The massive chamber buzzed with the sounds of 12 different alien species all talking at once. Their voices mixed together through translation machines, creating a noise that made Admiral Jake Morrison's head hurt. He sat straight in his chair, at the human table, his face showing nothing while the aliens around him argued about humanity's fate. The Zephyrian ambassador stood up from his seat across the room. His name was Clickstar, and he looked like a giant insect with too many eyes and clicking mandibles. When he spoke, his words came out as harsh, clicking sounds that the translation machine turned into cold, mechanical English. The human species will give up all their big warships right now, the machine said in Clickstar's voice. Humans will stop moving into the outer parts of space. All human colonies will let us watch over them and tell them what to do. Morrison didn't move. Next to him, Dr. Lisa Carter shifted in her seat. She was a smart woman who studied aliens for a living and helped humans talk to other species. For months, she had worked hard to prepare for these talks. But the aliens had made their choice clear from the start. They thought humans were too violent, too wild, too dangerous to be trusted in space. A tall crystal creature named Zethmer spoke next. He was from the Vortex species, and when he talked, his whole body vibrated like a giant tuning fork. Humans always fight, his translated voice said. Everyone knows this. The trouble at Kepler, the fighting at Titan Station, the weapons you built near Centauri. The galaxy needs to know that humans will not do these bad things again. Morrison finally spoke. His voice was tired, like a man who had seen too much war in his life. What happened at Kepler was us fighting back against pirates. Titan Station was us protecting miners who couldn't protect themselves. And we only built weapons near Centauri because you were doing military exercises right next to our space. Always making excuses, hissed Seleth, the snake-like representative from the serpentine species. Her long body coiled and uncoiled as she spoke. Always excuses. Humans cannot live without fighting someone. Dr. Carter leaned forward in her chair. We gave you detailed plans for working together. We want to share our technology. We want to trade cultures and learn from each other. We want to be part of the galactic community. The strangest member of the council was an ethereal, a being made of pure energy held inside a shimmering field. It pulsed with colors that the translation software said meant contempt. You want to be part of the community, but only if you can. Do things your way. The galaxy has decided this will not happen. Morrison stood up slowly. His military uniform was still neat and clean even after hours of sitting in the uncomfortable chair. Then I think we have nothing more to talk about. He picked up his datapad and looked around the huge room at all the alien faces staring at him. The human delegation is leaving these talks. The chamber exploded with noise. Aliens shouted and clicked and hissed and vibrated all at once. But Morrison and Carter were already walking toward the massive doors that led out of the room. Their footsteps echoed in the sudden chaos. As they reached the doors, Clickstar called after them. You cannot just walk away. The galaxy will not let humans keep being violent. Morrison stopped walking. He stood at the doorway and slowly turned around to face the room full of angry aliens. Ambassador, you have made it very clear that the galaxy will not let humans exist the way we are. We are simply accepting that you have told us the truth. The doors closed behind the two humans with a sound that seemed to echo through the entire chamber. The aliens sat in stunned silence, suddenly realizing that something had just happened that they had not expected. For weeks, they had been sure that the humans would eventually give in. Humans needed the galaxy, they thought. Humans needed trade and technology and help from other species. Humans would have to accept whatever terms the galaxy offered because they had no choice. But as the silence stretched on, some of the aliens began to wonder if they had made a mistake. The humans hadn't begged or pleaded or offered more compromises. They had simply accepted the galaxy's rejection and walked away. Clickstar looked around the chamber at the other representatives. They will be back, he said, but his voice didn't sound as confident as his words. Humans need us more than we need them. They will come back and accept our terms? Zethmer's crystal body flickered with uncertainty. Perhaps, but did you see the look in the Admiral's eyes? I have studied human expressions for years. That was not the look of a defeated species. That was the look of a species that had just made a decision. Seleth coiled tighter around her speaking platform. What kind of decision? I do not know, Zethmar admitted, but I think we may have just made a terrible mistake. The ethereal pulsed with colors that meant confusion. They needed this treaty more than we did. Without galactic support, humans will be isolated. They will have to come back to us eventually. But even as the alien representatives tried to convince themselves that they had won, a cold feeling was spreading through the chamber. The humans had not acted like a defeated species. They had acted like a species that had just been given exactly the excuse they needed for something else entirely. Outside the chamber, Admiral Morrison and Dr. Carter walked through the corridors of the Galactic Station in silence. Other aliens they passed looked at them with mixtures of curiosity and satisfaction. Word was already spreading that the humans had walked out of the peace talks. Admiral, Carter said quietly as they approached their shuttle, what happens now? Morrison looked out through the station's massive windows at the stars beyond. Now we go home, Doctor, and we tell our people that the galaxy has made its choice. And then, Morrison's smile was cold and without any warmth, then we make ours. The shuttle doors closed behind them, and the last human diplomats left the Galactic Station. Behind them, the aliens continued their discussions, convinced that they had just solved the human problem. They had no idea that they had just created a much bigger one. In the days that followed, the galaxy would learn that there was a difference between humans who wanted peace and humans who had been told that peace was impossible, the aliens thought. They had been negotiating with warriors. They had actually been negotiating with the humans who were trying to keep the warriors under control. Those humans were going home now. And they were going to have to explain to their people why the galaxy had rejected every attempt at cooperation, every offer of friendship, every chance for peace. The galaxy was about to discover what humans were really capable of when they stopped trying to be good neighbors. 3 months had passed since the humans walked out of the peace talks. The galaxy was starting to notice that something was different, but they couldn't quite figure out what it was. The difference was the silence. Captain Ben Rogers stood on the bridge of his ship, the UES Defender, watching the last human transport disappear into the bright flash of hyperspace. The evacuation of the disputed territories was happening much faster than anyone had expected. Even the humans themselves were surprised by how quickly they were packing up and leaving. Sir, Lieutenant Amy Foster looked up from her communication station. Her face was worried. We're getting reports from all over this sector. Human merchant ships are breaking their contracts. Research stations are shutting down. Diplomatic missions are packing up and going home. Rogers nodded. He had expected this. Orders from Earth Command. We're pulling out of all non-essential galactic operations. On the planet below them, the mining colony of New Dakota was shutting down. The colony had been there for 8 years, pulling valuable minerals from the ground and selling them to alien buyers across the galaxy. Now, trucks were loading the last containers while the colonists prepared to leave their homes. Colony Administrator Tony Blake watched the loading process while his assistant, Maria Santos, dealt with angry communications from their alien overseers. The Zephyrians who had been buying their minerals were not happy about the sudden shutdown. The Zephyrians are demanding that we keep mining, Santos told Blake. Her voice was tight with anger. They're threatening to take our equipment if we don't keep working. Blake looked out at the huge mining complex that had taken 5 years to build. Giant machines moved earth and rock, following patterns that had been carefully designed by human engineers. Let them try, he said. The mining software only works with human brain patterns. Without us, those machines are just very expensive. Junk. The same scene was happening all across the galaxy. Humans were leaving, and they were taking their knowledge with them. Dr. Patricia Webb was in charge of a research station that orbited a distant planet. She and her team had spent 10 years studying alien plant life. making discoveries that had helped both humans and aliens understand how life worked in different environments. Now she was watching her team destroy all their research rather than leave it behind for the aliens to take. "Are we sure about this?" asked Dr. Kevin Park, her assistant. He watched years of work disappear as computer files were deleted and laboratory equipment was broken down into basic materials. "The council made their position clear," Webb replied. "They don't want human involvement in galactic affairs. They're getting exactly what they asked for." She pressed a button, and the station's main computer began erasing itself. Decades of research, countless hours of work, discoveries that could have helped the entire galaxy understand the universe better. All of it was being destroyed because the aliens had decided that humans were too dangerous to be trusted. In the Centauri system, Colonel Rachel Moore was commanding the withdrawal of human military forces from the border regions. The massive defense platforms that had protected the space lanes for decades were being taken apart piece by piece. Some were being moved back to human space. Others were being destroyed rather than left for the aliens to use. "The Vorthek are moving ships into the sector," reported Major Steve Collins from his position at the tactical station. "They're saying it's a peacekeeping force." Moore watched the alien fleet approach on the main screen. The ships were large and impressive, but she knew they had no idea how to maintain the defense systems that humans had built. "Not our problem anymore, Major. We were told our presence was unwelcome. We're just doing what the galaxy asked us to do." The quiet efficiency of the human withdrawal was starting to worry the aliens. They had expected humans to be angry, to argue, to try to negotiate more. Instead, they were seeing something much more disturbing. The humans were simply leaving, and they were doing it without any drama or complaints. What the aliens didn't understand was that this quiet withdrawal was actually more frightening than any angry threat could have been. Humans who were angry might still be willing to talk. Humans who were simply packing up and leaving had made a decision that went much deeper than anger. The economic effects started showing up within weeks. Zephyrian Trade Minister Klixvar was the first to notice the problems. Human shipping companies had handled almost half of all the cargo that moved between star systems. When they suddenly canceled all their contracts and went home, the flow of goods across the galaxy began to break down. Alien ships tried to take over the routes, but they quickly discovered that shipping wasn't just about having vessels that could carry cargo. The humans had spent decades building networks of supply stations, maintenance facilities, and communication systems. They had developed computer programs that could plan the most efficient routes and schedules. They had trained crews who knew how to handle different types of cargo and deal with the problems that came up during long space voyages. The aliens had ships, but they didn't have any of the rest of it. They had been content to let humans handle the complicated parts of galactic trade while they focused on other things. Now, they were learning that there was a lot more to running a galactic economy than they had realized. The problems were getting worse every day. Without human research stations, important scientific projects were stopping. The Ethereal Council had lost access to the quantum communication networks that humans had built. Most importantly, the defense platforms that humans had maintained were starting to break down without proper care. On the former mining world of Kepler 438c, Zephyrian engineers were staring at the massive mining equipment that humans had left behind. Chief Engineer Klixenom had spent weeks trying to turn the machines on, but nothing worked. "The humans sabotaged everything," he reported to his supervisors. "No," came the reply from the investigation team that the Galactic Council had sent to figure out the problem. "They didn't sabotage anything. They just built it to work for them. The security systems, the control interfaces, the command protocols, everything was designed around human biology and psychology." This was the revelation that was slowly spreading throughout the galaxy. Human technology wasn't just advanced. It was specifically and uniquely human. The other species had been happy to use human innovations without understanding how they worked. They had assumed that they could just take over when they wanted to. Dr. Zara Kim was one of the few humans who had stayed behind to help with the transition. She found herself in the uncomfortable position of explaining to increasingly desperate alien officials why their systems were failing. The terraforming systems on the Vega colonies are shutting down, a Vorthic administrator told her. The atmospheric processors are failing one by one. Kim looked at the technical information on her tablet. The maintenance cycles need human oversight. The systems were designed to work with human problem-solving patterns. Without that, they're just following their basic programming until something breaks. Can you fix them? I could, Kim said. But according to the Council's own rules, human involvement in galactic affairs is no longer welcome. I'm only here to finish transferring data, and then I'm going home too. The administrator's crystal body flickered with desperation. Surely. We can make an exception. No exceptions, Kim interrupted. The Council was very clear. Humanity is too dangerous to be trusted with galactic responsibilities. We're just respecting that decision. The galaxy was beginning to understand that they had made a serious mistake. They had thought that humans needed them more than they needed humans. They were discovering that the opposite was true. 6 months had passed since the humans walked away from the peace talks. The galaxy was now discovering the true cost of their decision. What had seemed like a victory was turning into a disaster that grew worse every day. The Zephyrian Trade Minister, Klixvar, stood before the Galactic Council. His insect-like body was shaking with stress as he delivered his report. The clicking sounds he made were translated into words that carried panic and fear. The economic damage is far worse than we thought it would be, he said through the translation machine. Human shipping companies handled 47% of all cargo that moved between star systems. When they suddenly left, it created supply problems in 36 different sectors. The Vorthic representative Zethmar vibrated with confusion. His crystal body flickered with uncertain colors. We have ships, we have technology. How can losing one species cause so much trouble? The answer came from an unexpected source. Trade Administrator Linda Hill was one of the few humans still in galactic space. She was there to finish the final paperwork for the human withdrawal. She had been sitting quietly in the observer section, but now she stood up to speak. Because you never bothered to learn how any of it worked, she said in a calm voice. You saw the ships moving cargo, but you never understood the computer networks, the maintenance systems, the route planning that took us decades to develop. The snake-like serpentine delegate Seleth coiled with frustration. You could have shared this information during the peace talks. We tried, Hill replied coolly. But you were too busy talking about how to limit our expansion to pay attention to how we were already helping the galaxy work. The problems were spreading like a disease through the galactic economy. Without human research stations, several important science projects had stopped completely. The Ethereal Council had lost access to the quantum communication networks that humans had built. Most critically, the defense platforms that humans had maintained were breaking down without proper care. On the former mining world of Kepler 438c, Zephyrian engineers were still trying to figure out how to operate the massive mining equipment that humans had left behind. Chief Engineer Clixenum had spent weeks studying the machines, but nothing he tried would make them work. The humans must have sabotaged everything before they left, he told his supervisors over the communication system. No, came the reply from the Galactic Council's investigation team. They didn't sabotage anything. They simply built it to work for them. The security locks, the control systems, the command codes, everything was designed around human biology and psychology. This revelation was spreading throughout the galaxy like wildfire. Human technology wasn't just advanced. It was specifically and uniquely human. The other species had been happy to use human innovations without understanding them. They had assumed that they could simply take over when the time came. Dr. Zara Kim was a human technology expert who had stayed behind to help with the transition. She found herself in the uncomfortable position of explaining to increasingly desperate alien officials why their systems were failing. The terraforming systems on the Vega colonies are shutting down, a Vorthic administrator told her during an emergency communication. The atmospheric processors are failing one by one. Kim looked at the technical data on her computer. The maintenance cycles require human oversight. The systems were designed to work with human problem-solving patterns. Without that, they're just following their basic programming until something breaks. Can you fix them? I could, Kim said. But according to the Council's own rules, human involvement in galactic affairs is no longer welcome. I'm only here to complete the data transfer, and then I'm leaving too. The administrator's crystal body flickered with what Kim had learned to recognize as desperation. Surely we can make an exception. No exceptions, Kim interrupted. The Council was very clear. Humanity is too dangerous to be trusted with galactic responsibilities. We're simply respecting that decision. The situation was getting worse in other ways too. Pirates and raiders had always been a problem in the outer regions of the galaxy, but human defense platforms and patrol ships had kept them under control. Now, with the humans gone, the criminal fleets were becoming bolder. Captain Sarah Mitchell received distress calls every day at the human monitoring station on the edge of known space. Her orders were clear: observe and report, but do not help. The galaxy had made its choice, and humans were no longer responsible for galactic security. Ma'am, her communications officer, Lieutenant Dan Cooper, looked up from his console. His face showed barely controlled anger. That's the third Zephyrian convoy attack this week. 200 civilians are dead. Mitchell's jaw tightened. Every instinct she had as a military officer told her to help, but her orders were clear. Not our responsibility, Lieutenant. The Council made that very clear. The Vorthek colonies in the Centauri system were facing their own crisis. The terraforming systems that were supposed to make the planets suitable for life, or failing faster than their technicians could fix them. Atmospheric processors that had been designed to run for hundreds of years were breaking down within months. Administrator Zethkal contacted the Human Observer. Dr. Frank Turner, in desperation, you must help us. 50,000 colonists will die if we cannot restore the atmospheric balance. Turner looked at the technical data with the cold eye of a scientist. The quantum bioprocessors are operating outside their normal parameters. The human oversight systems have been offline for months. The machines are essentially running blind. Can you repair them? In theory, yes. But the Galactic Council has said that human intervention would be viewed as unwelcome aggression. My help would be seen as a violation of their independence. The Vorthek's crystal form pulsed with frustration. Independence means nothing to the dead. Turner nodded with understanding. I get your situation. But the Council was very specific about human involvement in galactic affairs. They saw our help as controlling, our protection as domination. I'm simply respecting their wishes. The aliens were beginning to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. They had thought that humans needed the galaxy more than the galaxy needed humans. They were discovering that the opposite was true. The Ethereal Council tried to establish their own defense network to replace the human systems. But when their first patrol fleet encountered human vessels at the edge of the Sol system, they got a shock that changed everything. The human ships they found were not like the ones in their records. These were bigger, stranger, and somehow more threatening. When the Ethereal commander tried to communicate with them, the response he got was cold and unfriendly. You are in violation of agreed boundaries, the Ethereal said through his translation system. There are no agreed boundaries, the human captain replied. The peace talks ended 6 months ago. There is no agreement because you refused to make one. You're in human space now, which makes you the ones who are violating something. The Ethereal's energy field fluctuated with alarm. Your ships are different from the ones in our records. The ships in your records were built for exploration and trade, the human captain said. These ships were built for something else entirely. The alien commander's tone shifted to something like panic. Are you threatening us? No, the human said simply. We're just showing you that you have no idea what you're dealing with. The humans you knew, the ones who wanted to join your galactic community, who tried to make peace, they're gone. You made sure of that. The ethereal fleet left quickly, carrying with them the first glimpse of what humanity was becoming in isolation. The galaxy was about to learn that rejecting the humans who wanted peace had consequences they had never imagined. 8 months had passed since the humans walked away from the peace talks. The galaxy was finally beginning to understand what they had lost. More importantly, they were starting to understand what they had awakened. The first real sign of trouble came from the outer rim of the galaxy, where pirate fleets had begun attacking shipping lanes with a boldness that shocked everyone. Without the human defense networks, the raiders operated freely. Their attacks were getting bigger and more violent every week. Captain Sarah Mitchell watched the distress calls come in at her monitoring station on the edge of human space. Her orders had not changed: watch and report, but do not help. The galaxy had made its choice, and humans were no longer responsible for protecting anyone else. "Ma'am," her communications officer, Lieutenant Dan Cooper, looked up from his console. His face was red with anger that he was trying to control. Another attack on a passenger liner. This time it was an ethereal transport ship. 300 civilians dead, including children. Mitchell felt her hands clench into fists. Every part of her wanted to launch her ships and hunt down the pirates, but her orders were clear. "Not our job anymore, Lieutenant." The Council made that very clear. 8 months ago, the Vorthak colonies in the Centauri system were facing a different kind of crisis. The terraforming systems that made their planets livable were failing faster than anyone could fix them. Machines that had been designed to work for centuries were breaking down in just months. Administrator Zethkal was getting desperate. He called Dr. Frank Turner, the human observer who was still finishing up the final paperwork for the withdrawal. "You must help us," Zethkal said. His crystal body was flickering with the colors that meant fear. 50,000 colonists will die if we cannot fix the atmospheric systems. Turner looked at the technical reports on his computer screen. The numbers were not good. The quantum bioprocessors are running far outside their normal limits. The human oversight systems have been offline for months. The machines are basically running blind and making mistakes. Can you fix them? Technically, yes. But the Galactic Council has said that any human help would be seen as aggressive interference. My assistance would be viewed as a violation of your independence. The Vorthak's crystal form pulsed with frustration. "Independence means nothing if we are all dead." Turner nodded sadly. "I understand your situation. But the Council was very specific about human involvement in galactic affairs. They said our help was really just a way to control you, and our protection was really domination in disguise. I'm simply doing what they asked." The true scope of the crisis became clear when the Ethereal Council tried to build their own defense network to replace the human systems. Their first patrol fleet was sent to establish a perimeter around their core worlds. But when they encountered human vessels at the edge of the Sol system, they got a shock that changed everything. Commander Lisa Hayes watched the alien ships approach on her tactical display. The UES Retribution was one of the new ships, built with technology that the galaxy had never seen before. No longer worried about appearing threatening to alien sensibilities, human engineers had taken a very different approach to ship design. "They're trying to contact us," reported her communications officer, Ensign Paul Morris. "Put them through." The ethereal commander's translated voice carried confusion and a hint of fear. "Human vessel, you are violating the agreed boundaries. Please explain why you are in this system." Hay smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Commander, I think you are mistaken. The peace talks ended 8 months ago. There are no agreed boundaries because there is no agreement. You are in Sol System space, which makes you the ones who are violating something. The Galactic Council has authority over its member species," Hayes interrupted. "Humanity is no longer seeking membership. We are simply existing." The ethereal's energy field fluctuated with alarm. "Your ship design is unlike any human vessel in our records. The ships in your records were built for exploration and peaceful contact," Hayes replied. "This ship was built for war." The alien commander's tone shifted to something approaching panic. "Are you threatening us?" "No," Hayes said simply. "We are just showing you that you have no idea what you are dealing with. The humans you knew, the ones who wanted to join your galactic community, who tried to make peace and work together, they are gone. You made sure of that." The ethereal fleet retreated quickly, carrying with them the first real glimpse of what humanity was becoming in isolation. The ships they had encountered were not just different, they were clearly designed for combat in ways that the aliens had never seen before. Back on Earth, the transformation was even more dramatic. The planet that had once been divided by nations and conflicts was now unified in a way that had never happened before in human history. The rejection by the galactic community had given humanity something it had never had: a common enemy and a shared purpose. In the orbital shipyards around Earth, Mars, and the outer planets, construction was happening at a pace that amazed even the humans themselves. But these were not the exploration ships and research vessels that had carried humans to the stars. These were warships, built with technologies that had been developed in secret over the past 8 months. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of the main shipyard, watching the construction of the largest fleet in human history. The ships being built were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They incorporated lessons learned from decades of studying alien technology, but they were built with a purpose that the aliens had never intended. "Status report," Morrison asked his chief engineer, Colonel Nancy Price. "We're ahead of schedule on all major construction projects," Price replied. "The new quantum weapons systems are testing beyond expectations. The defensive systems are incorporating technologies that we developed specifically to counter known alien capabilities." Morrison nodded with satisfaction. "And the crews?" "Every ship has a full crew of volunteers waiting. We have more people wanting to serve than we have positions available." The transformation was not just technological, it was psychological. The humans who had tried to make peace with the galaxy were gone, replaced by humans who had accepted that peace was impossible. The species that had held back its violent nature for the sake of galactic harmony was no longer interested in harmony. Dr. Helen Grant, who had been humanity's chief diplomat, was now serving as an advisor to the military command. She had spent her career trying to build bridges between species. Now she was helping to plan what would happen when those bridges were burned completely. "The psychological profiles are clear," she told Morrison during their daily briefing. "The rejection by the galactic community has unified our species in a way that nothing else ever could. For the first time in human history, every nation, every colony, every faction has the same goal." "And what goal is that?" Morrison asked, though he already knew the answer. "Survival," Grant replied, "and making sure that no one ever threatens our survival again." The galaxy was about to learn that there was a difference between humans who were trying to be civilized and humans who had given up on civilization. The explorers and diplomats and scientists who had represented humanity in the galactic community had been the ones who believed in peace and cooperation, but those humans had been sent home, rejected and dismissed by aliens who thought they knew what humanity was capable of. Now the galaxy was about to meet the humans who had always known that peace was temporary and that survival required strength. The age of human restraint was coming to an end. The galaxy had poked the wrong creature, and now they were going to discover what humans were really like when they stopped trying to be good neighbors and started preparing to be survivors. 1 year had passed since the peace talks failed. The galaxy was in complete chaos. The Galactic Council chambers, which had once been filled with the confident voices of species who felt secure in their power, now echoed with desperation and fear. Ambassador Clickstar of the Zephyrians stood before the assembled delegates. His insect-like body was shaking as he spoke, and his translated voice carried a note of terror that no one could ignore. "Human fleets have been detected in 17 different systems. They are not attacking, they are not talking to us, they are simply watching us." The Vorthic representative Zethmer vibrated with deep unease. His crystal body flickered with colors that meant confusion and fear. "Our colonies are dying. Our trade routes have collapsed. Our defense systems are failing. And now we learn that humanity has been observing our weakness the entire time." The snake-like serpentine delegate Selith coiled in agitation around her speaking platform. "What do we know about their current military capabilities?" The answer came from someone no one expected, Dr. Helen Grant, the last human diplomat. remaining in galactic space, had been quietly watching the proceedings from the observer section. Now she stood up, and her presence commanded attention from every alien in the chamber. "You want to know what humanity has become?" she asked. Her voice carried the weight of a full year of anger that had been building inside her. "You created something that never existed before in human history. You gave us a unified species with a single purpose." She activated a holographic display that showed the Sol system. The aliens gasped as they saw what humanity had built. For the first time in our entire existence, every human nation, every colony, every faction has the same goal. You gave us something we never had before. You gave us a common enemy. The display shifted to show massive shipyards orbiting Earth, Mars, and the outer planets. The construction was on a scale that none of the aliens had thought possible. While you have been struggling with systems you never understood, we have been building. Not exploration ships, not research vessels, not diplomatic cruisers. We have been building warships. Admiral Morrison entered the chamber at that moment. His uniform now carried insignia that the aliens did not recognize, symbols of a military force that had been transformed by a year of preparation. The human species thanks the Galactic Council for making our position in the galaxy clear. You have saved us from the weakness of hope. The ethereal council member pulsed with alarm, its energy field fluctuating wildly. You cannot be serious about starting a war. The entire galaxy will unite against you. Morrison's laugh was cold and completely without humor. The galaxy? You mean the same galaxy that cannot maintain its own infrastructure without human help? The same galaxy that has been begging for our assistance for the past year while simultaneously telling us we are too dangerous to exist? Dr. Grant stepped forward, her voice calm but carrying an edge that made every alien in the chamber feel suddenly cold. Every species in this chamber has made the same mistake. You assumed that the humans you met, the explorers, the diplomats, the scientists, were the only kind of humans that existed. You forgot that we are the species that conquered our own planet before we ever reached for the stars. The chamber fell completely silent as the implications of her words sank in. The humans they had known were the ones who had chosen peace, who had wanted cooperation, who had sought to join the galactic community. Those humans were gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. The Terran Union offers the galaxy one final opportunity, Morrison announced. His voice carried the authority of someone who held the power of life and death over entire worlds. Complete withdrawal from the Sol system and all human-claimed territories. No more interference in human affairs, and formal recognition of human sovereignty over our sphere of influence. The Zephyrian ambassador's voice was barely a whisper when he asked, "And if we refuse?" Morrison's smile was terrifying in its complete simplicity. "Then you will discover what a species that survived 10,000 years of warfare can accomplish when it is no longer trying to be civilized." The holographic display shifted once more, showing the full scope of the human fleet. Ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, built with technologies that had been developed in secret over the past year. The galaxy was looking at the military might of a species that had been holding back its true nature for decades. The ships were not just larger than the old human vessels, they were clearly designed for a completely different purpose. Where the old ships had been built for exploration and peaceful contact, these were built for conquest and destruction. The aliens could see weapon systems that they did not recognize, defensive technologies that seemed impossible, and propulsion systems that suggested the humans had made breakthrough discoveries while in isolation. "You wanted to know what humanity was capable of," Dr. Grant said quietly. "You poked the wrong creature. The humans who came to you in peace were the ones who had learned to control their nature. You rejected them, dismissed them, and sent them home to the ones who never learned that control. The Galactic Council had thought they were neutralizing a threat. Instead, they had created the very monster they had feared. The humans were no longer seeking a place in the galactic community. They were preparing to take one by force. The humans you knew were our diplomats and scientists," Morrison continued. They were the ones who believed that different species could work together, who thought that peace was possible, who wanted to build a better galaxy for everyone. You told them they were wrong. He paused, letting his words sink in. Now you get to meet the humans who always knew they were wrong. The ones who understand that the galaxy is not a place where the weak survive. The ones who remember that we became the dominant species on our planet not through cooperation, but through being better predators than anything else that lived there. The chamber was so quiet that the only sounds were the hum of the translation systems and the nervous breathing of the alien delegates. They were finally understanding what they had done. They had not ended a threat. They had created one that was far worse than anything they had imagined. You have 30 standard days to consider our terms, Morrison announced as he and Dr. Grant prepared to leave for the final time. After that, we will consider the question of human safety in the galaxy to be entirely in our own hands. The chamber doors sealed behind them with a sound that seemed to echo through the entire station. The aliens sat in stunned silence, finally understanding that they had made the worst mistake in galactic history. The humans were coming home, and they were bringing war with them. The age of human restraint was over, and the galaxy was about to learn why humans had ruled their world long before they ever reached for the stars.